In a world where financial systems and resources are as much weapons as military power, the stakes have never been higher. Global tensions are surging, and the latest moves by Russia and the United States reveal just how deeply entrenched the economic battlefield has become. As Russia seizes assets from U.S. banking giants, Washington tightens its grip on Iran's oil exports in a bid to curb Tehran's influence. These actions aren't just strategic plays. They are the latest volleys in a high-stakes economic war that is reshaping the global order. On October 1, 2024, Iran's direct missile assault on Israel sent shockwaves through the international community. This brazen move prompted a swift response from the United States, expanding sanctions targeting Iran's crucial petroleum and petrochemical sectors. These sanctions, which are part of a broader effort to cut off financial resources used to fund Tehran's military operations and destabilizing activities, represent a significant escalation in the ongoing geopolitical conflict. Chapter 01: The October 1st Attack and Its Aftermath. The missile barrage launched by Iran against military targets in Israel on October 1st was ostensibly a retaliation for a series of high-profile assassinations. These included the killing of Hamas chief Ismail Haniyeh in Tehran and the deaths of Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah and an Iranian general in Beirut. Israeli operations were widely suspected in these targeted assassinations, and Iran's response was both swift and devastating. This attack, however, was not just a military move. It carried profound political and economic consequences, particularly for the U.S.-Iran relationship. The U.S. government, already at odds with Iran over its nuclear program and regional activities, seized this opportunity to tighten the noose around Tehran's oil exports. Chapter 02: Expanding the Scope of Sanctions. In response to Iran's assault, U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen announced a new wave of sanctions. The sanctions specifically target the Iranian regime's ability to export petroleum and petrochemical products, thereby cutting off one of its most vital sources of revenue. The goal of these actions is clear: to deprive Iran of the funds necessary to further its missile development, nuclear program, and support for proxy terrorist organizations across the Middle East. These sanctions target Iranian efforts to channel revenues from its energy industry to finance deadly and disruptive activity, said Secretary Yellen in a statement. She emphasized that the U.S. would continue to take all necessary actions to hold Iran accountable for its destabilizing behavior. Chapter 3: The Role of Executive Orders. Two key executive orders, EO 13902 and EO 13846, form the legal framework for the sanctions imposed on October 1st. EO 13902, first enacted under the Trump administration, allows the U.S. to target a wide range of activities in Iran's economy, particularly focusing on the petroleum, petrochemical, and mining sectors. By expanding the reach of this executive order, the Treasury Department can impose sanctions on any person or entity found to be operating in Iran's oil industry. In conjunction with Executive Order 13846, which addresses sanctions on those involved in the purchase, transport, or sale of Iranian petroleum products, the latest measures target 10 entities in multiple jurisdictions and identify 17 vessels involved in illicit shipments of Iranian petroleum. These sanctions go beyond the U.S.-designated National Iranian Oil Company and Trilliance Petrochemical Co. Limited, two major players in the Iranian oil industry. The U.S. State Department has also designated 6 additional entities and 6 vessels as blocked property, further complicating Iran's ability to move its petroleum exports on the global market. Chapter 4: Shadow Fleet and Illicit Oil Trade. A key focus of the new sanctions is what is known as Iran's shadow fleet of tankers. This fleet consists of vessels registered in various countries, including the United Arab Emirates, China, and Panama, that have been used to circumvent U.S. sanctions by transporting Iranian oil under false flags or through other deceptive practices. By targeting this fleet, the U.S. is sending a clear message to companies and nations that engage in these illicit activities. Doing business with Iran's oil sector will have serious consequences. Chapter 05: The broader geopolitical implications. While the sanctions are intended to choke off Iran's oil revenues, their impact extends beyond the realm of finance. The Iranian missile attack on Israel has already heightened tensions in the Middle East, with fears of further escalation between the two countries. In the days following the missile strike, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu vowed to take retaliatory action, while U.S. President Joe Biden urged restraint, warning of the potential consequences of a full-scale military strike against Iran's oil facilities. For Israel, the stakes are incredibly high. Iran's support for Hamas, Hezbollah, and other proxy groups poses an existential threat to Israeli security. The October 1st missile strike only underscores the ongoing danger Iran represents to the region. In Washington, the U.S. government is balancing its support for Israel with concerns over the broader economic and political impact of military action against Iran. A military strike on Iran's oil facilities, for example, could send global oil prices soaring, potentially destabilizing the global economy. Such an outcome would have far-reaching consequences, particularly for American consumers and the Biden administration's domestic political fortunes. Chapter 06: The Global Response. International reaction to the U.S. sanctions has been mixed. While Israel and other U.S. allies in the region, such as Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates, have welcomed the move, others have raised concerns about its potential impact on global oil markets. Iran, for its part, has vowed to continue its oil exports despite the sanctions. Tehran has long maintained that it has the right to develop its energy resources and defend itself against foreign aggression. In a statement to the United Nations, Iran's envoy, Amir Saeed Iravani, reaffirmed his country's commitment to defending its sovereignty and vital interests. Iran stands fully prepared to defend its sovereignty and territorial integrity against any aggression targeting its vital interests and security, Iravani said. Chapter 07: Escalation or Diplomacy. As tensions between the U.S., Iran, and Israel continue to escalate, the future remains uncertain. The October 1st missile attack on Israel and the subsequent U.S. sanctions have set the stage for a potential spiral into greater conflict. However, there are also opportunities for diplomacy. While the U.S. has made it clear that it will continue to hold Iran accountable for its actions, there remains the possibility of negotiations to de-escalate the situation. For now, Washington's strategy is clear: deprive Iran of the financial resources it needs to continue its destabilizing activities and make it harder for Tehran to fund its military operations. But as the situation evolves, the world will be watching closely to see if these sanctions are enough to curb Iran's ambitions, or if they are merely a prelude to something much more dangerous. On the other hand, in an escalating move amidst a backdrop of geopolitical tensions, a Russian court has taken the unprecedented step of freezing nearly $1 billion in assets held by two major U.S. banks, J.P. Morgan Chase and the Bank of New York Mellon. The decision, handed down by the Moscow Region Arbitration Court, affects approximately $985 million and marks another chapter in the ongoing financial warfare sparked by the West's sanctions on Russia following its invasion of Ukraine. This development represents a deepening of financial hostilities and could significantly strain U.S.-Russia relations, which have already been in a downward spiral since the war began. The court's ruling is part of a broader legal conflict involving Russia's largest bank, Sberbank, and its subsidiary, the International Reserve Bank, whose liquidation by Ukrainian authorities in early 2022 set the stage for this latest confrontation. Chapter 8: The legal battle unfolds. The legal proceedings began when Russia's Prosecutor General filed a case late in September 2024, alleging that the liquidation of Imstar Bank had effectively blocked nearly $372 million held at the two U.S. banking giants. The funds, a significant portion of MR Bank's assets, were stranded as a result of U.S. financial restrictions and Ukraine's actions, leading to Sberbank's inability to access its resources. According to the prosecution, J.P. Morgan and the Bank of New York Mellon were custodians of these funds, and the court was asked to freeze the money held in their accounts at Citibank Russia, another major U.S. institution operating in Russia. The goal? to secure $372 million in damages for Sberbank, which, as Russia's primary state-owned bank, is a direct arm of the Kremlin. Chapter 09. Type S accounts. What makes this case particularly intriguing is the involvement of so-called Type S accounts. These special financial vehicles were created by the Russian government in the early days of the conflict with Ukraine as a defensive measure to protect Russian assets from Western sanctions. Entities from nations labeled as unfriendly are restricted in their ability to move funds out of Russia through these accounts, effectively locking foreign investments inside the country. The Russian Prosecutor General's office argued that J.P. Morgan and the Bank of New York Mellon held significant sums in these restricted accounts, further complicating any effort by the banks to repatriate or use the funds. The court's ruling puts a hold on nearly $985 million in total, with around $919 million attributed to J.P. Morgan's Type S accounts and the remainder held by the Bank of New York Mellon. Chapter 10. Financial retaliation. This court-ordered asset freeze highlights the increasingly retaliatory nature of the financial sanctions war between Russia and the West. Since Russia's invasion of Ukraine, Western nations have imposed a sweeping array of sanctions designed to cripple the Russian economy, targeting everything from individual oligarchs to state-owned enterprises like Sberbank. In response, Russia has implemented its own measures to shield its economy, which includes freezing the assets of foreign companies and institutions operating within its borders. The freezing of J.P. Morgan's and the Bank of New York Mellon's assets underscores the Kremlin's willingness to hit back at Western institutions, even those of such global financial prominence. While these banks are unlikely to face severe economic fallout from the asset freeze, considering their overall balance sheets, this move is a stark message to the West. Russia has signaled that it is prepared to escalate the financial conflict if necessary, and U.S. companies with operations in Russia are now on even shakier ground. Chapter 11. What's next? While the Moscow court's ruling is significant, it is unlikely to be the final word in this legal battle. J.P. Morgan and the Bank of New York Mellon are expected to fight back through diplomatic channels, and the U.S. government may intervene on their behalf. However, the broader context of U.S.-Russia relations does not bode well for a quick resolution. In the meantime, the asset freeze will likely complicate efforts to resolve the financial losses caused by the liquidation of MR Bank. As tensions continue to rise between Russia and the West, this financial dispute will only deepen the animosity and complicate future diplomatic negotiations. As the global economic landscape shifts, these moves could have serious consequences for everyone. If you enjoyed this breakdown and want to stay up to date with more deep dives into global events, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss a video.